right, so let's bring in Mr. Day Akintobi, journalist, public affairs analyst. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program.
My pleasure always.
And you look black and white.
I got the memo this time that Friday is Thailand's Day.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It feels a bit strange not having that rope around the neck.
Yeah.
It's freedom, you know?
Yes, it's freedom.
It's absolutely lovely.
And it looks fantastic.
Thank you. That's kind of you.
So let's get to the first dailies here. The Leadership newspaper, Leadership Friday, is leading with the educational sector. FG ASUU dispute Lingers as minister denies past agreements. Al-Hausa insists FG has no binding pact with union. Says Yahya Ahmed-led committee to renegotiate the ASUU agreement. I guess FG union meeting fails to hold. Is that going to be?
Here we go again.
Are we here again?
Yes,
the other day we had the ASUU president here, and as we're having the conversation, it's something just proper. I said, let me ask him, how much is this? Because there are a couple of other things. So, for instance, I wanted to find out how much is the entirety of these monies that is always an issue, besides the other thing they asked for. So the one he had on record for us when we asked about the arrears, you know, they went on strike and then there was a back and forth, no work, no pay between them and former President Muhammadu Buhari and all of that. Eventually they came back from, I think, 8 months, and some salaries were owed and all back and forth. I think some arrears were still held back about 3 months or so. And I said, how much is this money? He said about 8.5 billion. So it's embarrassing. What is 8.5 billion to the federal government, for God's sake? The money they gave the Tigers and the Falcons is about 5-point-something billion if you look at the exchange rate. So, should we go these routes?
It's not that the government can't afford to pay it. They are not paying it because they don't have the money. 8.5 is a drop in the bucket for the federal government. There are bigger issues, and you can begin to see where that comes from in the denials about having an agreement. Federal government is saying we didn't sign any agreement. What we had is a draft. ASUU is saying federal government is not keeping to the agreement that they both agreed to. Whether it was actually physically signed, the truth of the matter is there was an agreement, which is why the strike was called off. Every strike gets called off after they are sat at the negotiating table and reached an understanding. So clearly, that strike you talked about that lasted 8 months was called off after they reached some sort of an agreement. And ASUU is saying as far back as 2009, they already had a written agreement, which is what has been
reviewed over and over and over.
Reviewed, but that 2009 document basically is the guiding law that they have been dealing with ever since, and that's what reviews have been based on. So as far as they're concerned, they do have a binding agreement with the government. They just simply try and get it improved and updated. So you ask yourself, well, is it semantics or is it intentional misdirection when somebody is saying we don't have a standing agreement with you, and yet somebody else is showing something signed in 2009? If government is a continuum, this current administration is bound by what was signed in 2009, exactly, either by President Yar'Adua or by President Goodluck. I'm not sure who was in power when that agreement was signed. But the bottom line is this: we don't want any kind of disruption to our academic calendar again. Our students sitting at home. I heard somebody who said he entered university at 2020, and this is 2025, and he's nowhere near graduation due to all of the hiccups.
And it's meant to be a 4-year course, not medicine.
No, it's a 4-year course. It's not medicine. He's in for a standard bachelor's degree. He's in his 5th year, and graduation is nowhere in sight.
Wow.
So, and this is part of the course in terms of most of our students. They're all experiencing this. They know when they start. They have no idea when they're going to finish. And this is part, we're already suffering from brain drain. All our best brains are leaving the country. Even lecturers are moving in droves out of the universities and going overseas. So the few that remain here, that want to help us build a better Nigeria, that see Nigeria as the future, and that are trying to grow and develop themselves, we should encourage them in every way. What is 8.5 billion naira for the federal government that everyone will now down tools, the kids will go home and sit for a while, campuses will shut down? And you know the worst part about a strike? Starting back up. Eventually they will agree on something, which means that they could have averted the strike if they worked hard at it enough. They will eventually agree. But after they agree, look at the disruption from that break and how difficult it is to get started back up again. It's a lose-lose all the way around. The kids lose, the lecturers lose, the academic community loses, our intellectual development is arrested, and it's just a lose-lose all the way around. So why would we even bother? I don't see why the government is doing this.
So I don't think we should be shocked when we then see the outcome in our society, our economy. These are things that we caused to happen in the first place. But it's quite shocking, Mr.
Akintobi.
Nigeria's issues can just bog you down. It's quite shocking that the Solicitor General said that no agreement was signed.
That's a shock, a big one.
Because we saw all of the conversations they had. We've reached an agreement, but they're saying this is not an agreement. This was just a proposal. Again, some things don't shock me anymore, I must say. But let's move over to New Telegraph, Mr. Akintobi.
Yes.
And talk about this $1 trillion economy. So the NEC meeting held yesterday, the Vice President chaired, and he came out, spoke about a couple of things and said, well, the 2025 agenda ends this year, so they are switching gears now to the 2026 to 2050 agenda. And they have endorsed this new medium-term strategy to align with 2050 development agenda. Excess crude account now $535 million. And FG says Nigeria First policy eyes 3 trillion naira earnings from made in Nigeria goods. And you see all of those interplay there. But as much as we speak about all of these agenda or medium-term goals and all of that, a lot of people still remember all the previous ones, and they wonder, were we really better for it as a nation? Or these are just documents we just have for the sake of having them? Okay, let's have a document. It's time to have a document. So really, what has been missing for you? Even the UN has challenges with the SDGs and now, well, MDGs first and the SDGs, right? In fact, they have to say the SDGs will not be like the MDGs. We're going to do something entirely different and allow this to be private sector-led. You guys own it. We're no more funding this. So what exactly have we been missing with these, what call them, strategy agenda in that sense?
Let's go back and remember Vision 2020. That seemed to be the beginning of this penchant for very rosy outlooks. And essentially that's what those things are. They project into the future and say for the next certain period, we're going to do this to grow the economy. And the current one that was announced yesterday, like you say, is from 2026 to 2050. But they're saying the key word is that by 2030, we'll have a $1 trillion naira economy. Well, the first thing is, if you look pre-May 29, 2023, how much was $1 trillion naira worth compared to how much $1 trillion naira is worth today? Is $1 trillion naira really a whole lot of money in terms of the entire country's GDP, the entire country's economy?
$1 trillion. $1 trillion. Yes.
$1 trillion. Okay, so that changes the whole equation. As long as it's $1 trillion, I think it's a good goal. The question is, how do we sustain it? How do we reach it? Because historically, these type of long-term plans have never really been sustained. They're just put on paper and they're said to make us feel good, but do we really see the outcome over time? I think that this government, in terms of its economic reforms, seems to be focused and actually wants to achieve something. And you look at some of the indices, oil production is up. And they are predicting we'll do 2.5 million barrels a day, which of course will have a major impact on our dollar earnings. When this government came in, we were just slightly over 1 million. Now we are well over 1.5 million a day, you know, grasping at 2 million a day, close to it. If they get to 2.5, that shoots up that the dollar aspect of our economy. So I look at it and I think, okay, they believe very strongly in their reforms, because you see them touting them everywhere that, you know, yes, there was hardship for Nigeria, but what we wanted to do was stabilize the economy. And the economy is now stable. The problem with that is, even if you have a stable economy, that stability has got to translate into specific economic gains for the man in the street. There is that lacuna up till now. That stability is not translating yet into economic benefits. So Vision 2050, Vision $1 trillion, only becomes meaningful if we begin to see the effect on the ground and not just on paper. So they said a lot of fancy things they were going to do yesterday to make this a reality. I think it is within our ability to achieve it.
Right.
I don't doubt that Nigeria has the economic clout, the intellectual capacity, the physical energy, and the wherewithal to be able to achieve it. The question is the political will there? Is the selflessness there? The willingness to work for the common good as opposed to the individual good? Is the willingness to make sacrifices at the political level? Is Nigeria's political elite willing to put aside notions of self-interest versus notions of national interest? These are the things that make the difference between such a plan coming into reality and it just being fancy words on paper. So the jury is out on this one. The previous ones didn't achieve what they intended to beyond making us feel good, making us be optimistic for a little while. And you know, Nigerians, we have famously short memories. So they said this yesterday, 6 months, 9 months down the road, we'd have forgotten about it and be focusing on something else. So they will go quietly into the good night and not say anything about it again if they're not able to meet up to what they've promised to do.
You know, the sectors that are supposed to drive this is high capital intensive. Mm-hmm. So development stands on a tripod.
Yes.
Of, you know, infrastructure led by power. So if power is not sorted, we're going nowhere. Another element is the issue of human capital, skills, scalability. This is what China has used to outplay America. America is still trying to grapple with how to deal with China. Because for every 10 you see in America, you may see another 20,000 in. And then you also look at technology. So these are some of the elements as far as that. And when I see this ambition, great ambition, that we need to edge around maybe close to double digits in terms of our GDP yearly to be able to achieve this. But maybe we're moving away from the economy. Just need to put that in. Let's go to the Daily Times newspaper that talks something that has to do with security. Chief of Army Staff raises concerns over drug abuse among soldiers in conflict zones. Chief of Army Staff raises concerns over drug abuse among soldiers in conflict zones.
That's a scary thing. That's really worrisome. Because
Is this about abuse or about
stress relief?
There's another word I'm looking for. Maybe when it comes, I'll let you know. But something close to stress relief.
Yeah,
what do you think is happening here?
Being
coping mechanism. That's the word I was copying.
It's possible, and I know that even in the United States, many of their servicemen have had substance abuse problems over time. They've had psychological issues because being on the front lines and seeing your very life flash in front of you does have a psychological impact any which way you look at it. And people have different coping mechanisms. Some people are able to withstand that kind of pressure, and there are others who need an escape to be able to remain sane and remain functional. In that environment, they need an escape. And so various people have different coping mechanisms. There are a number of them who have turned to substance abuse because, of course, substance use gives you an altered state of consciousness. And maybe that's what they need to be able to cope out in the field. But it is worrisome because when you are in an altered state of consciousness from substance use, you could possibly become erratic and unpredictable, which is the worst thing that can happen out in the field. Your colleagues need to be able to count on you because you are each other's brother's keepers and you are responsible for keeping each other alive. If your colleagues can't count on you, you become a liability in the battlefront. And so this is a really worrisome development. I know Nigeria as a whole has a drug problem, a drug usage, a substance abuse problem as a whole. And you look at it and you wonder that is it really possible that the social ills that pervade the society, won't they have a way of seeping into certain other sectors like the military? What fortification does the military have to keep out the social ills that pervade our society? What are the things? Yeah, they receive training. But most of their training relates to physical ability. How much psychological training do they get? How much emotional fortification do they receive during their training process? So this is a scourge that is having a deleterious effect on the larger society. Now imagine what it's going to do if it pervades the ranks of those who are out there defending our territorial integrity, and even now we're relying on them more for internal security as well. It's a worrisome development. I don't know what our military brass is going to do about it. I know there's rehab options. There's always been internationally two different schools of thought. Do we attack the supply side? Do we attack the demand side? Where do you pay the attention? And for a long time, America fought the demand side. They locked up and threw the key away of every drug dealer. Even if it was the smallest quantity of grams, you'd get a life sentence. But what that did in America was it fueled the demand because it got harder to get. It fueled the demand to where demand got out of hand. Now America has had a rethink over the years. They're looking at the demand side and paying more attention. That's why you see things like legalization of marijuana in certain states. You see it approved for medical use in other states. So they're looking less at the punishment aspect of the demand.
Less of criminalization.
Less of criminalization of the supply side, and they're looking at treatment and abstinence options on the demand side. So it's a very tough social problem to handle, and it's really worrisome, and I hope that both the Ministry of Health, the military brass and administration, and all those who can play a role in this, even down to the NDLEA, NAFDAC, anybody that has any tangential involvement both on the supply and the demand side need to buck up and address this quickly, because it is the most debilitating thing that could ever happen to our troops if this becomes a virus in the midst of the men and women.
Oh dear. What a grim picture, but there's hope. But let's switch gears to the Guardian newspaper, Mr. Kintobi. I think for Friday, the Guardian tries to tone it down a bit. And the focus is on sports. And the caption is, "Bad for business. Surge in unruly fan conduct. Match day violence plunge NPFL in crisis." And you can see pictures. In fact, there's one picture you can see, I think, a fan kicking the referee.
Wow.
From behind.
And the referee running to his light.
The referee is running, and you can see the colleagues watching like, maybe thank God I'm not the one being kicked. You can see another picture of fans intruding to the pitch. Two pictures, actually. And, you know, I was just trying to do some comparison. Again, they say don't compare, but they're always quick to compare. And you see the EPL, for example, maybe that's shooting too high, but let's just compare for the sake of comparing. And you see how much just TV rights alone is worth for the EPL. I'm not talking about the whole EPL. You see how much the tickets go for. You see how much it is celebrated. You see the whole ecosystem of the EPL. That's the English Premier League. I just think if the United Kingdom relies on EPL alone, that's like oil for them.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's great work. If any country is able to harness such, fantastic. But here we are at the NPFL, still battling very mundane issues like this. What exactly is the issue here, Mr. Kintobi?
Don't forget that hooliganism actually is a major problem in the EPL as well.
Exactly.
In fact, we have more issues of hooliganism in the Premier League than we do here in Nigeria. Now remember, football is like a religion in Nigeria. People are very passionate, and they've always been expressive about their passion, about their favorite teams, and about the game itself. But it hasn't really in Nigeria become a problem that has spiraled out of control, where fans start attacking each other and attacking the referees. We don't see that happening in spite of the passion we bring to the game. It's not part of our culture to be violent and fight over this kind of thing. So when you see that report that says on opening day, fans are chasing. I mean, in the past we've had one or two isolated incidents where there was a really egregious miscarriage of justice, perhaps like a penalty awarded that shouldn't have been awarded and cost one side the game, where fans have been vocal in their objections. But it has hardly ever risen to the level, not frequently, that we would see this kind of hooliganism like we're used to seeing in the EPL. There's hardly any match in the UK that doesn't end with some kind of fisticuffs breaking out. But
not on the pitch.
No, not on the pitch, unless after the match.
Exactly, outside. Do your thing outside.
Absolutely. I think, well, you know that we have a rabid following and an almost personalized relationship with our favorite teams in the EPL. And I think not only are we taking on their colors, their culture, but we're also imbibing some of their behavior. So I think Western culture has seeped into our environment so much that we're taking on a lot of their attributes, positive and negative, because you wouldn't in the past see our fans getting violent with each other or getting violent with the officials. But in the EPL, it has started to look like this is the way we do it, even if it's off the pitch, on the pitch, whatever the case may be. When we're not happy about something happening, we express it physically. Now, in Nigeria, as passionate as we are about football, you would expect that our own football league will be almost tops in the world in terms of fan participation, in terms of team support, in terms of TV rights. But yet, we're just doddering along like it barely registers on the radar screen that we even have a league. And you wonder, where's the dichotomy coming from? If you've got this massive fan base, this massive amount of passion for the game. So what that tells you is that the administrators and the organizers are failing to harness the vast potential market that we have in Nigeria for football. And yet you see our players going overseas and excelling. So it's not for a lack of talent. We've got the talent that can propel us into a world-class league. But because the organization is poor. I mean, the problems are systemic. You're at National Stadium watching a football match, electricity power shuts down.
Why are you watching the match at night? Why don't you go and play? Anyway, I'm just joking.
Yeah, I know you're just being tongue-in-cheek facetious, but the point is there are systemic issues and then there are organizational and administrative issues as well. And so you begin to see a breakdown in the orderliness, in the process, in the functionality. Remember, sports, apart from being a unifier, is also a pastime that is supposed to relieve tension. It's meant to make us forget our issues, forget our for that 90 minutes while you're watching that match. Nothing else exists in the world. Not your bills, not the school fees, not your landlord's rent, nothing for those 90 minutes. So it's a very good way to make you forget the issues that may be plaguing you. But now what we're doing is we're bringing our issues in.
Yes, so in fact, that's the point you feel tension the most when you're watching. And we saw the result with the Chan Eagles. I mean, Sudan defeated Chan Eagles 4-0. And that's a local player, so it's just clear from
Sudan that is even in crisis, by the way.
Yes,
okay, before we leave the Guardian newspaper, there's another story just at the bottom right, I think.
Yes.
Nigeria facing malnutrition, 79% food insecure, says FG. I think one of the permanent secretaries at a roundtable had made the assertion about malnutrition, undernutrition, even overnutrition in that sense. That entire box, and talking about food insecurity, 79, that's quite, this is coming from the federal government. What do you think they're saying here?
Well, that's justification for President Tinubu going to Brazil, because one of his focal points in Brazil was food security. Agriculture was the main thing, although he also went to talk about energy
and aviation.
But agriculture was the key. And part of the reason for that, of course, is because we're not producing enough to feed ourselves. And the only way a country can actually ever attain food security is to be able to grow what it needs to feed itself. As long as you are still importing, reliant on importation, you will always be food insecure. And that's why the deal with the Brazilians is supposed to be about knowledge transfer, technology transfer, not just be importing their beef. That's not what the president went there to do. The idea was let them come here and help us set up in such a way that we'll be able to produce enough for ourselves to eat. Now, part of the problem, of course, with food distribution, food production in this country is insecurity. Insecurity has had a major impact on our ability to produce food. Bandits, kidnappers, terrorists, herder-farmer clashes have vastly depleted our capacity to produce. Prior to this major insecurity problem, we were closer to being able to feed ourselves and relied a bit less on imports than we do today, because we produced more. Yams, tomatoes, poultry, even livestock. We were able to actually produce quite a bit, even if it didn't get to the point of fully feeding us. We didn't rely so much on importation. But the moment this insecurity got out of hand, then our ability to produce dropped. And that meant that so we don't starve, we had to rely on bringing food in. So you begin to see malnutrition become a problem, because why? Imported food is expensive, Naira is devalued, and so it costs more to buy anything that you bring in. Even the one they produce here still costs more, because the people who are producing here say, well, we're buying expensive fuel, we're paying for expensive electricity, we're this, we're that. So even the cost of locally produced is up, and then imported is even higher. So how do poor people, less privileged people, working class people, how do they not get malnourished? When we were growing up, you were guaranteed 3 square meals a day in Nigeria. Today, I think they have a formula they use. I think they used to say 111 was breakfast, lunch, dinner. Then it became 101 or 110. Now it's 001, and in some cases 000.
Interesting. You know, some arguments come, so, oh, food is expensive here, it's cheaper here, and all of that. But generally, prices have gone up. Absolutely. Relative to where we're coming from.
Absolutely.
This Nigeria leads with the NNPCL. NNPC refineries lose 500 million naira monthly, says Ojulari. That's by Ojulari, the CEO. 6 foreign expertise says attacks, sack plots won't derail reforms. You know, there was a time we had whether it was he tendered his resignation. Well, this is the cabal at their finest. Yes. The persons that don't want it to function and work. We don't know the backstory, whether it has to do with him signing off certain things or the reform is going to close the loophole that is being used to milk our nation dry. We will expect him to be brave enough to tell us the things that he can say. I'm sure there are things he can say on television. But we expect him to be brave enough to say that. But he said what he has to say. Look, the model we're using for our refineries is not going to work. We have a working model. Let's adopt it. NLNG. You know, the federal government maybe has about, is it 48 or so %? And then the other people, the private investors, have the majority on the table. What do you make of it?
So, well, first thing was I listened to his exchange with the Nupeng people, Pengasan people yesterday, and it was a bit revealing. First and foremost, I wasn't happy that he didn't name the people who are after him. Too
early in the day.
Well, he says petitions have been written to the EFCC, so clearly he has some idea about who is after him, and if somebody truly is trying to eliminate you or assassinate you, the police should already be on the tails of that person. They may not be able to reveal to us publicly. But the thing that bothers me is that even the most illiterate, unlettered, unenlightened Nigeria has known for decades that the model of government trying to run the refineries does not work. But yet you saw the last administration. Thankfully, Mele Kyari's accounts have been frozen recently, but hopefully it goes a bit beyond that. But you saw how they deceived Nigerians, saying that Port Harcourt was coming on stream tomorrow, and they kept giving us dates. And at one point, they brought a bottle of oil and said this was produced at the Port Harcourt refinery. And then there was the argument of, oh, it was blended oil from Malta. Wow. And they just kept dribbling us and dribbling us and dribbling us. And they kept giving dates. Port Harcourt will work. I assure you, Port Harcourt will work next week. After that, Warri will work. After that, Kaduna will work. And government is a continuum. Even the Mele Kyari was still in this present administration at its inception. Yet, we found out that this is a deceit, this is a fraud, and it looks like Mr. Ojulari is trying to clean it up. From everything he says and from things that have been happening around him, he seems committed to reform. I like the notion of the fact that he says we need a different type of business model to make this thing work. We're going to bring in experienced refiners to joint venture with us, to do a JV with us, and we work together to try and make this thing. But look at the staggering numbers. He said the refineries were losing $500 million, not Naira. Not Naira.
I think it was Naira.
Was it Naira?
Yeah. It had better be Naira, Mr.
I hope.
He said
because
Naira,
I really panicked because I saw the dollar sign and I said, if it is this much, we are bankrupt already. You know,
maybe you spend dollars a lot, so you automatically discovered.
So, but those numbers were so staggering that even in Naira, that he said when he came on board and saw that we're losing this kind of money and we're not getting anything for it, the first thing he did was shut down the refineries. So people have been there drawing salaries, getting ESTA code for expenses, running diesel, running electricity, running costs, and they're not producing anything, but they're drawing salaries. So the first thing he did was say, look, I've done an audit, I see that there's no point losing all this kind of money every month. So he says he shut down all the refineries. Let's regroup, let's re-strategize and start from scratch. So he's now concluded that they want to do a JV with some international refinery companies, that these refineries will work. Well, we've heard it all before, but he seems to be cut off a slightly different cloth from those we're used to seeing, and I really wish him success and hope.
I think
it'll benefit all of us as Nigerians.
There's a model working, so I'm happy. We're not saying anything out of the box.
No, NLNG is brilliant.
NLNG, the model is working.
Perfectly.
The government is involved, but they are not running it.
No, they're hands off.
Yeah, so they just have a vote on the table, make a few decisions, but they don't have a final say. That is what he's saying.
But NLNG is not new now. It's been there for 10 years. Years. How come the previous NNPC people didn't think that and say, well, let's do it this way?
No, they wanted the ancestral refineries to keep working. Now it has failed.
Yes, Dangote has shown them all up.
Yes, Dangote came and built and is working, so it's a shame on us.
Absolutely.
But we're happy somebody's trying to pick it up.
I think so.
And we'll support anything that makes the country work.
Absolutely.
Mr. Dayo Kizobi, Public Affairs Analyst, thank you so much for coming on the program. We appreciate you.
My pleasure always.
We'll take a quick break. When we come back, Deji Adeyanju will be joining us. There's a lawsuit against him from, I understand, lawyers from Mr. Peter Obi about some defamatory statement seeking a retraction. I think he also filed his own suit against one of his followers or one of the followers of Mr. Peter Obi. There's this back and forth as to what is exactly playing out. Well, he'll be explaining to us what is happening in just a moment. Stay with us.